Starvation is one of the longest deaths a person can endure. It has a profound effect on your mental state as well as body. So, what does it feel like? That's what I'm here to tell you. During the first few days, you'll experience an unrelenting pressure headache. By day 3, you begin to have the shakes. In the second stage, which lasts for weeks, your only remaining energy source is the breakdown of fats. This is a point where your brain begins to suffer. You'll be in a foggy state, and you may feel rather numb to outside stimuli. By the third stage, your body fat reserve has been depleted, your skin becomes flaky, and you notice you're losing a lot of hair when you shower. At night, you experience severe restless leg syndrome. Your abdomen begins to bloat and you feel a dull pressure. Severe mood swings strike, you feel like an emotional wreck. In the end stage, you are severely dehydrated and your immune system compromised. Death might come from an infection, stroke, or cardiac arrest. If you aren't taken out from any of those illnesses, you will die from multi-organ failure, which is very painful. Kenny Veach was an avid hiker with a daredevil streak. In 2014, he posted a comment on a YouTube video claiming that he discovered an odd M-shaped cave with supernatural powers in Vegas. He attempted to go back to find it, but did not have any luck, and people began calling bullshit. He claimed the cave affected his body and drove wild sensations inside of him. In November of that year, he set out for a third time to find the cave. It was a reckless journey. He was under the influence of alcohol. Sadly, he never came home. The following day, search and rescue found his cell phone near an abandoned mine shaft. They used tracking dogs to follow his scent, but the trail disappeared near his phone. Many people working the search believed that Kenny simply fell down the mine shaft. Conspiracy theories went wild. Everything from aliens and Area 51 to government experiments began flying around the net. Many months after Kenny vanished, his girlfriend posted a lengthy comment claiming that she believes Kenny took his own life. He had struggled with mental illness. To this day, Kenny has never been found, leaving this mystery still unsolved. Piranhas have inspired several horror movies. With their flesh-eating habits, they are certainly nightmare fuel. What would it feel like to die by piranha attack? I'm about to tell you. Piranha attacks are rare, but they do happen. Children seem to be especially susceptible. Piranhas typically only bite humans once, but that one bite is enough to cause massive blood loss and signal to all of his piranha buddies to come join in on the human feast. The black piranha's bite force is 30 times its own weight and even stronger than an American alligator. Survivors have claimed that a piranha bite feels like a sharp vacuum, sinking teeth in and sucking out your tissue at a rapid speed. Once the piranha's buddies show up, it will be game over. One shoal of piranhas can have up to 20. After several bites, you'll feel weakened by blood loss and pain and will be unable to fend them off and swim away. You'll feel like you're being tortured with sharp razor blades slicing your skin all over your body. You'll be pulled and pushed by the force of the many bites. In minutes, you will go limp, slipping underwater from hypovolemic shock. If blood loss doesn't kill you in 3 to 4 minutes, you will drown to death. So you want to know what it's like to die from radiation? Sit back and let me tell you. The length of time it will take to die is dependent on the level of exposure. Immediately after, you'll experience nausea, dizziness, and an intense headache. As time ticks by, violent vomiting begins, and so does the burning. Radiation burns take time to form, so you never really know how bad it's going to get at first. Within an hour, you begin to lose a lot of body fluids. You are covered with deep radiation burns that are getting deeper. Your skin and tissue is basically disintegrating before your eyes. Your body begins to seize, jostling you all around, causing further damage to your burns. Internal bleeding begins, and additionally, your nose, eyes, and rectum begins to bleed. No medicine is able to touch the hot, searing pain. You have 3-dimensional burns, meaning they basically run inside out. You begin hoping for death. You start to shake uncontrollably, and your veins begin to burn as your blood becomes acidic. Finally, you go comatose. Your suffering ends, your organs shut down, or you go into cardiac arrest. Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to die from being encased in concrete? Well, stay tuned and let me tell you. Initially, it might not feel so bad, but within minutes, your skin will start to feel like it's on fire. The concrete itself can cause chemical burns, and once the curing process begins, the concrete gets piping hot, adding insult to injury. Then your insides will begin to burn. The heat of the concrete will basically slow cook your organs. Once the concrete begins to harden, you'll be completely restricted. Panic will kick into overdrive. Your chest will not be able to move, meaning your lungs cannot expand. The process of suffocation begins. An impending sense of doom will invade your mind. Dizziness will strike. You might lose control of your bladder. If your head is fully submerged, death will come far sooner. Eventually, your brain will trigger a breath that is unavoidable. You'll inhale the thick substance and basically drown in concrete. You'll fall unconscious within 2 to 3 minutes and die around 6. Either way, death is imminent, and both will cause suffocation. First, the brain will be severely damaged, and then your heart will give up or go into cardiac arrest. 250 people are killed each year by lions. Do you want to know what it would be like to be mauled to death by one? Then stay tuned. Lions are a little more merciful than bears. They tend to go straight for the jugular to try and kill their prey quickly. This can be both good and bad. Bad because it makes survival harder, good because with any luck, it'll be quick. If a lion comes at you from behind, it will likely go for your head, clamping its jaw down on your scalp and using its claws to wrestle you to the ground. The force of the lion will be jarring. It will feel like a minor car accident. The lion would then snap your neck or suffocate you with a tight bite to your throat. The select few who have survived an attack claim that their adrenaline really quieted the pain. In fact, a few had a difficult time understanding that they were moments from death. African lions typically hunt in groups, so if you have a face-off with one, more will likely join in, grabbing your legs and arms with their teeth, violently shaking you in every direction, which may rip you apart. The entire nightmare should be over within 1 minute, and cause of death would be suffocation, a broken neck, or a blood loss. You've heard people say that they might die of a broken heart, but is that even possible? Turns out it is, and I'm about to tell you exactly what it would be like. Broken heart syndrome, or stress-induced cardiomyopathy, can strike people of all ages. The cause is an abrupt surge of stress hormones, which could be brought on by divorce, death, betrayal, or rejection. It can also be provoked by a good shock. The symptoms can vary between men and women. You will become flushed with a cool sweat, and your head may feel like it's about to pop from pressure. Even your mouth will begin to sweat as nausea turns inside of you. You'll find it tough to draw in a deep breath. You might feel listless and anxious, and a sudden chest pain will hit you, which may be dull at first, but it will tighten up like a band is wrapped around your chest. Then it will begin to feel like someone is pumping your heart in their fist, crushing the life out of it. The pain might extend into your throat or jaw. Once the hurt becomes unbearable, you'll keel over and the lights will go out permanently. Bamboo torture is nightmare fuel. A person's tied down horizontally facing upwards over growing bamboo shoots. Shoots would eventually begin sprouting out of various body parts, slowly killing them. But what would it feel like? That's what I'm here to tell you. Bamboo grows freaky fast. It can grow several feet in a day, and it's strong enough to pierce concrete. Rumor has it that this method was used on American POWs in Japan during World War II. Mythbusters prove that this method is possible. Imagine you're stuck lying down as many thick nails are slowly driven through your flesh and tissue. That's what it would be like. Sadly, adrenaline wouldn't help much for pain relief. This method takes days or even a week or more to kill. Either the bamboo would rupture an organ causing sepsis, or you would die of hypovolemic shock. Keep in mind that the bamboo is constantly growing, piercing into virgin tissue. That's the kind of suffering that words cannot truly captivate. Unless the bamboo punctures your heart or brain, death would likely take at least 3 days and possibly closer to 7. You'd be dealing with unimaginable, throbbing misery as your immune system attacks the bamboo and as blood slowly drains out of you. We've made it to March, which means storm season's right around the corner. I'm sure you're all wondering what it would be like to die by lightning, and I'm here to tell you. There are a couple of ominous signs that you are moments from being struck. You might have a metallic taste in your mouth, you'll hear an odd buzzing, and your hair will stand on end. Once struck, you'll have up to 200 million volts traveling at 1/3 the speed of light coursing through your circulatory system. You'll feel a jarring jolt like you've never experienced before, and then you'll be completely out. There's a chance you'll die of cardiac arrest before regaining consciousness. If you come to, you'll feel very disoriented. Within seconds, you take notice of the erratic pounding of your heart. You see an oddly beautiful burn pattern branching over your body that still feels hot. If you took a direct hit, the burn pattern will be accompanied by jagged open wounds that are deep in your tissue, and they will actively burn. Your flesh can explode from the hit. You will be abruptly stricken with a crushing pain in your chest. You become drenched in a cold sweat, and the salt makes your wounds sizzle. The lights go out again due to cardiac arrest, but this time you don't wake up. This execution method was widely used in the 18th and 19th century. Something about it feels especially haunting. What did these prisoners experience while hanged? Well, I'm about to tell you. If you're lucky, the force of deceleration after dropping will break your neck. The fear and anticipation would be the worst of it, but that didn't always happen. Once you drop, you'll feel an intense ripping pain on your neck and throat, which will heat up and cause severe friction burns. Your instinct will be to grab the rope to try and free yourself, but this is futile. An intense pressure will be born in your head that will become greater with each passing second. A severe sense of panic and doom will take over your thoughts. Oxygen is being starved from your brain. You'll taste dirty metal on your tongue from the internal bleeding in your throat, and blood may boil up past the rope. Your chest will feel heavy like it's made of lead. Your brain will malfunction, compromising your clarity. You'll lose control of your bowels and bladder, and finally, you will go dark in 4 to 6 minutes. We've all suffered from insomnia at one point or another, but did you know you can die from it? I'm going to tell you what it would be like. Fatal familial insomnia is a degenerative disease that honestly sounds miserable. It's said to be rare, however, due to the condition of the ill at the end stage, cases likely fall through the cracks. It begins as just textbook insomnia. Additionally, you may experience lucid dreams and muscle jerks. Over the course of months or at times years, you reach a point where you'll be physically unable to sleep at all. You won't be able to tell someone or ask for help. You'll be in a constant hallucination and 100% unable to differentiate between what's real and what isn't. You'll have auditory and visual hallucinations. You'll be in a perpetual sleep deprivation psychosis, which may be perceived as severe schizophrenia. Sadly, even strong sedatives will not work. There is no cure. Within weeks of the end stage, you will slip into a coma. It will likely be the first peace you would have in a long while. In this case, the death is more forgiving than the disease. Have you ever wondered what would happen if you fell into an active volcano? I'm going to tell you what it would be like. There are several possibilities here that would bring death, and the one that you should hope for is hitting your head or breaking your neck from the fall. You see, despite movies' portrayal of lava, you wouldn't actually sink. Lava is melted magma, which is made of rock, and even though it runs like a liquid, the density would still prevent a human from becoming submerged. There are noxious gases filling the air you are trying to breathe. Also, the radiant heat is 1,175 degrees centigrade, which will begin burning your lungs and flesh before you even land. You'll be overcome with a searing pain from the inside out. Once you meet deceleration and smack against the lava, what's left of your clothing will burst into flames, and then so will you. Because of the burning assault on the way down, death will come a little faster than traditionally being burned to death. You will likely die of thermal decomposition due to the intensely high heat. The extreme burning pain is greater than any other pain known to man, and within 30 to 45 seconds, it will finally be over. The idea of being trapped in a vessel as it sinks into the sea truly terrifies me. I'm here to tell you what it would feel like to drown while in a car. You will likely be in a state of panic. Remember, it's impossible to open a door while partially submerged, but once all the way under, the pressure equalizes and you can. It takes 30 to 130 seconds for a car to completely sink. At that point, there will be no more oxygen for you to breathe. Of course, you'll try to hold your breath, but after 87 seconds, you'll have more carbon dioxide than oxygen in your blood, causing a chemical sensor in your brain to trigger an involuntary breath. This will be a turning point. Functioning will get so much more difficult. Your lungs will fill with water, which will cause an intolerable burning from your chest to your throat. Your head will feel swollen and foggy. The transfer of oxygen to your blood will cease. This is when you will lose your fight, free-falling into darkness and becoming a part of the water's motion. Just like the car that is now your prison, you'll sink to the water's floor. Your heart will become starved of oxygen, which will kill you. You'll lose consciousness in 2 minutes and die in 6. We've all heard of urban legends of waking without a kidney, but let's face it, they aren't so much legends. I'm here to tell you what it would feel like to have your organs harvested. In all likelihood, your trafficker would knock you out in whatever sick-minded way they saw fit to keep you from squirming and potentially causing damage to the organs. But for the sake of science, let's say that isn't the case here. There's no preparing yourself for the agonizing hell you're about to endure. You may be lucky enough for your assailant to use a scalpel instead of a saw, but chances are both would be rusty, leading to a burning, jagged incision. Your heart rate will increase dramatically, leading to a pounding sensation, but the shocking sight and pain will likely overshadow it. The pain will be in layers. First, searing. Below would be a hot stabbing, followed by an exploding sensation, and bottoming out with an awkward pressure all at the same time. The process of bleeding to death has begun, unless you have a skilled surgeon, which is unlikely. Blood loss will be what kills you. Sounds will grow muffled. Your breathing will increase only to slow down. Your head will fill with pressure, and finally, the hellacious pain will slowly fade into black. I'm here to tell you what loss of life support feels like for the patient. Once the proverbial plug is pulled, death typically occurs within 24 hours. It only takes longer for people who are aware but suffer from severe lung disease. They can still draw in a breath, but they're not getting enough oxygen, so suffocation takes longer. If a person's deemed brain dead, death occurs within 8 minutes because they cannot draw in a breath, so suffocation begins immediately. After studying so many medical case reports, I can confidently say for once in my videos that in this case people do not feel any of it. Their brains cannot comprehend what is happening, even if their bodily reactions say otherwise. So for once, I can say it is a peaceful death. For people who are conscious and aware, their heads fill with a hazy pressure, it feels incredibly swollen, their skin becomes mottled, their brains malfunction, and clarity fades. Their throat and chest begins to burn, they weaken, and their heart stops. But luckily, doctors provide medicine to keep them comfortable throughout the process. I'm here to tell you what it would be like to be killed by a nuclear explosion. Perhaps the most merciful death comes to the people caught within 3 miles of the detonation. You will not feel a thing. You'll basically be converted from solid matter to atoms instantly. The only remnants of your existence will be a shadow permanently etched into our world. The heat and light of the blast bleaches everything it touches, leaving behind eerie death shadows of people and things that once were. If you're outside of the 3 miles yet still close, your death will not be forgiving. The force of the blast will toss you in the air or bring structures down on top of you, causing injury, but that isn't the worst part. Shortly after exposure, you'll begin violently vomiting and develop a wicked headache. Deep radiation burns will form all over your body. Your skin and soft tissue will basically disintegrate, and you'll lose bodily fluids. The searing pain will be so great that medicine will not touch it. You'll begin convulsing, and your organs will shut down, eventually ending your miserable battle. If you're farther away, you'll likely develop cancer or aplastic anemia later in life. Ever since I learned about the nature of Jeffrey Dahmer's crimes, I have had an irrational fear of dying in a vat of acid. Ever wonder what that would be like? I'm here to tell you. Unfortunately, it takes longer for a person to dissolve an acid than you'd think. Sure, the horrific effects begin immediately, but depending on the type of acid, it can take up to 40 minutes just to eat through your soft tissue. Within seconds, your skin will be bubbling and covered in agonizing chemical burns. Your flesh will spit and split open, and your blood will react, causing the creation of carbonic acid. As torturous as it may be, swallowing the acid will help bring death faster. Granted, it will eat away at your tongue and esophagus and lungs, causing the traumatic pain to be felt from the inside out, but it can shave seconds off of your misery. Plus, you'll inevitably swallow it at some point. If you're lucky, the fumes of the acid will knock you out before entering, but that's rare. If the acid is strong, you will be out within a minute before the acid turns your bones to rubber and liquefies your organs. Within 12 to 14 hours, only byproducts of the process will remain. This is what bleeding to death would feel like. The process can take hours, but it can transpire in haste, causing death in minutes. At onset, you may not be aware that something's awry if you're bleeding internally. You might notice that you're especially thirsty or winded. As the bleeding continues, your body sounds several alarms. Your heart rate will grow rapid and neurotic while standing. Your body will go numb and tingle. Your head will begin to pound with heavy pressure. Once you near the point of hypovolemic shock, you'll see a ghostly pallor in the mirror. Your chest, throat, and head will feel internally hot. The ground will magnetically pull you down. You will begin to violently tremble and become flushed with the kind of weakness that will make you want to rest your head forever. Your tongue will feel swollen and bone dry, making it difficult to swallow. Your vision will be distorted by floaters and auras, or may go out entirely. You'll be drenched in icy sweat, and you may feel like you're about to vomit up your heart. You will know that you're dying. Dizziness will transcend your clarity, and you will fade into darkness. I'm glad I'm not the only person to ever wonder what would happen if a human were microwaved. For those of you who also suffer from dark curiosities, I'm here to tell you what it would be like. In the 60s and 70s, microwaves were basically death traps. There are many stories of people who obtained gnarly radiation burns to their hands, some who lost their fingers, and that was just after seconds of exposure. Your skin and retinas will be the first thing to scorch. It will be a bizarre kind of agony. Your eyes will feel like they're bulging out of their sockets and about to explode. And they probably will, but first you'll lose your vision. Every inch of your skin will be smoldering. It will shrivel up as moisture is drawn out and then split down to your soft tissue. Surprisingly, your internal organs will be spared, but your blood will not. It will curdle as it is cooked, like a bad can of Campbell's tomato soup. This will singe your vessels, which will hurt like a son of a bitch. You aren't going to like this, but it can take up to 30 minutes to cause death in an average weighted adult. You will not explode, but like I said, your eyeballs will. Hyperthermia will likely be your cause of death after enduring radiation hell. If you're on board a plane mid-flight when it explodes, needless to say, it will be a pretty rotten day. You'll be at least 32,000 feet in the air, and death is almost a certainty. If you're hit directly by the explosion, you might be lucky enough to die immediately or at least be knocked out. If not, you'll be smacked with an unruly hurricane-strength force that will attempt to suck you and everything else on board through the newly made hole and into the sky, sending you free-falling towards Earth. The strength of the force may be robust enough to actually rip you apart. This force is caused by explosive decompression, and it can happen with even a tiny hole in the plane. As you can imagine, if the explosion is strong, the hole will be large. It may appear that the plane's actually disintegrating as it falls apart and pieces are sucked out. You might die before you even end up free-falling from barotrauma, which is ruptured tissue caused by pressure-related changes. Hypoxia or lack of oxygen is also another potential cause of death. Both of these would be far less frightening than free-falling over 32,000 feet and dying on impact. Let's have a chat about what it's like to die by carbon monoxide poisoning. Water heaters, furnaces, and gas fireplaces are some of the biggest offenders. It's early afternoon and you suddenly have an uneasy tummy and your head begins to fill with pressure. You wonder if perhaps your lunch just isn't sitting right. By 2:30, you suspect you're falling ill with the flu. You feel a cold achiness in your back and joints and your skin is sensitive. By 2:50, you start violently vomiting. You feel like you're gargling lava. You head to the kitchen for water, but your heart begins pounding hard against your ribs. Your respirations grow rapid, and oddly, you feel like you just cannot catch a full breath. You detour towards your couch. The moment that your head touches the cushion, it begins to mercilessly pound. Your palms and shirt are wet with a chilling sweat. At 3:09, you realize that you're in real trouble, but it's too late. Your eyes roll back into your head and you begin to seize. All of the world feels so far away. Some invisible force is pressing hard against your chest. You desperately gasp for oxygen and solace, but you slide into total darkness. Let's discuss what it would be like to die in outer space. I'm not sure if you caught my videos on Mount Everest, but to me, that place is proof that hell is actually freezing cold. Well, space is even more freezing. Its average temperature is negative 455 degrees. And what's shocking is that isn't even what's going to kill you. There is no protection from the sun, so despite the fact that you will feel a deep searing pain all over your body as accelerated frostbite takes hold, you'll actually obtain such a severe sunburn that you will develop skin cancer in seconds. If you so much as glance at the sun, you'll instantly go blind. A process called Aneurysm will set in. Basically, the space vacuum will cause the nitrogen in your blood to dissolve, creating a lot of bubbles in your veins, which in turn will make you inflate like a human-shaped balloon, starting with your extremities. All remaining oxygen inside of your brain and lungs will also be sucked out by the vacuum, causing hypoxia. Your lungs will rupture, and you'll be out cold in 15 seconds or less. Your blood will begin to boil due to lack of oxygen, but luckily, you will already be a goner. If you're a slasher flick fan, then you've seen your fair share of throats being slit. Ever wonder what that would feel like? I'm here to explain. In order to cut deep enough to cause death, you have to have a powerful grip and go fast. You'll be in shock for a moment as the sharp, thick blade comes at your flesh. You'll be overcome with a scalding hot pain like the metal of the blade just came out of a fire from your worst nightmare. It will be a simultaneously burning and ripping sensation deep in the meat of your neck. If the slice is successful, it will sever your trachea, making it impossible to scream, and rupture your carotid artery, which is the moment of no return. Additionally, it will slice into your jugular vein. Movies, of course, make death seem instantaneous, but in reality, it will take 30 to 60 seconds to bleed out. You'll feel your life source drain out of you, like pulling the plug on your bath. You'll begin to violently tremble. Seeing all of your blood spit out of your wounds will accelerate the effects. You'll feel your heart tucker out, and you will know that you're dying. Finally, weakness will make it impossible to stand, and you will fade into total darkness. I sure hope that none of you participated in the Tide Pods challenge. Sure, they look a bit like candy and smell nice, but I'm confident that it's common knowledge to not consume these things. I'm here to tell you what it would be like to die from eating them. Eating a handful of Tide Pods is worse than drinking regular soap, though you shouldn't do either. These funky little pods are filled with concentrated detergent. Aside from burping up putrid-tasting bubbles, they can unleash a hellacious reaction inside of your body. Some of the harmful ingredients include ethanol, hydrogen peroxide, and polymers. Once they hit your stomach, if still whole, your stomach acids will degrade the film, rupturing them, and the chemicals will burn, literally. They'll begin eating through your esophagus, stomach, and intestines, causing bloating, intense burning pain, and violent vomiting, but not just regular vomit, bloody vomit. You're basically being internally destroyed, causing bleeding, and additionally, it will cause explosive bloody diarrhea. The harmful chemicals can make their way into your bloodstream, organs, and nervous system, causing seizures, coma, and death in minutes. If that doesn't happen, then they will take you out with internal bleeding. Let's talk about what it feels like to die by lethal injection. The thing about lethal injection is it's designed to keep inmates from feeling any part of their death. However, there's a lot of room for error with the untrained people starting the IVs. If done right, you truly will not feel anything more than a prick of a needle and slight sting as the first drug enters your veins. In moments, you'll feel a heavy sheet of grogginess and drift into peaceful Z's. But if botched, you're basically strapped in for an agonizing hell long before you have the chance to actually go. If the needle blows your vein and the person starting your IV is not trained to catch it, that first peaceful drug will not go into your blood. Instead, it will go into soft tissue, in which it will take your body way too long to absorb. The same will go for the second and third drug. Problem is, the third drug, potassium chloride, meant to stop your heart, burns like a son of a bitch. People have said that it feels like acid, so anything that it touches will be scorched. Sadly, it's going to take up to an hour and a half to be absorbed and to kill you. You will feel like you're burning alive from the inside the entire time. It will be a welcome reprieve when your heart finally stops. The electric chair is perhaps the most painful of all modern execution methods. Let's discuss what it feels like. First, your head will be shaved, and then you'll be strapped to the death device. Electrodes are attached to your head and various parts of your body. A metal cap is secured with a strap under your chin with a sponge wet with saline underneath. Finally, you're blindfolded. Your wretched misery begins when your executioner pulls a lever sending 1,000 to 2,000 volts of smoldering electricity through your body. Will you feel pain? Yes. This will be the single most painful experience of your life. The electricity is cooking you, frying you up like morning sausage. If you're lucky, your heart will stop beating after the first surge, but it's more common to take several. Your blindfold is meant only to conceal your eyes as they pop out of their sockets. Your clothing will smoke and catch fire, and so will your flesh. You're now damned with burning alive. After the second surge, your body will bloat like a balloon. You'll remain conscious through it all until death occurs, which can take up to 12 minutes. Afterwards, it'll be hours before your autopsy is performed because your body will be too hot to handle. This one has actually happened more than a few times. I just covered one of these in a video last month. Let me tell you what it would feel like to be sucked into a jet engine. The short answer is not much. You'll be shredded in moments. Jet engines are basically human-sized paper shredders. Your brain will not remain intact long enough to process the violent, quick assault. This will be far more long-lasting and traumatic for the bystanders. This is one of those rare causes that is actually 100% impossible to survive. This would make an especially effective execution method. The blades are made of titanium, and aside from being sharp, they spin at a rate of up to 20,000 revolutions per minute. So, when would death occur? You'll be diced up into tiny bits literally faster than you can blink. And if you continue to have your pieces pulled farther into the jet engine, those pieces would be pulverized into even tinier pieces. Absolutely horrific to witness, but a pretty misery-free death. It's safe to say that special safety precautions need to be met if you work anywhere near them. Flaying is perhaps one of the worst ancient methods of torture and execution. Let me tell you what it would be like to be skinned alive. First of all, you're in for a bit of a process. Human skin doesn't just slide off of your body. You'll need to be tenderized a bit. Either you'll be placed in the sun all day until you're burned to a crisp or dipped into boiling water. Sadly, this isn't the worst part. Instead of having time to recover from your smoldering pain, the flaying process will begin. First, the skin on your face will be sliced off. The cut will extend beneath your epidermis, derma, hypodermis, and subcutaneous layer to just above the muscle. After, small punctures will be made all over your body to score the skin. Very long, thin pieces will be cut and peeled off of you. You'll feel every single nerve ending as it's dissected, and these nerves extend into even your deepest layer of skin. This horrific torture will go on for hours. Death will come from blood loss, shock, hypothermia, or infection. Your skin is an internal organ that keeps in heat and keeps out dangerous bacteria. You'll be forced to endure your agony for up to an entire day before your body gives out. Well, we've discussed planes and automobiles. Time to add trains to the list. Let's discuss what it feels like to be hit by a train. It's pretty unbelievable, but there's actually a woman who survived getting ran over by a freight train. But most are not that lucky. You might suffer severe blunt force trauma to your head or neck, killing you on impact. In this case, you won't feel any of it, but there's no guarantee. If you roll underneath, engine pieces or the wheel will slice into your body, but it will depend on your position on how deep the cuts will go. Unless you're lying with your arms pinned to your sides, your arms will be ripped from your body. Adrenaline and shock will aid the pain a little, but you're still in for an abrupt, deep, throbbing pain. Additionally, your face will be sliced all over, or you could be decapitated if your head isn't flat on the ground. Once that happens, your pain will cease, but if your head remains intact, you'll still be aware for several seconds. There are obviously many methods of death in this case, and the time frame ranges from immediately to up to 2 minutes. So do not play on train tracks. It's not a gamble that you want to take. The mind can sure run away with itself. Have you ever had the thought, what would it feel like to be deep fried? Well, I'm here to explain. This one is a little tricky. The size of the person and how much fat they have on their body is a huge factor. The more fat, the better. The fat would protect your internal organs for a longer period of time. However, it can catch fire. Your main arteries, like the carotid, would still cook at the same rate. Upon entering the hot crackling oil, you would acquire third-degree burns in a matter of seconds and near fourth within 10. This may actually cause worse scalding pain than burning alive. Sure, frying oil isn't nearly as hot as fire, but oil holds in heat. Plus, it clings to your silhouette tightly. By the minute mark, your carotid will be cooked, causing a major blockage, preventing blood and oxygen from reaching the brain. Furthermore, you might just burst into flames, adding severe insult to injury. I'm thinking it will feel like napalm all over your body, seeping deep into every layer of flesh. Inescapable misery. You will be unconscious due to shock after maybe a minute, and dead within 2 due to thermal decomposition of your tissue. Let's discuss what it would feel like to die from the Black Death. The bubonic plague spread with fury in the 1300s, claiming the lives of 25 million. At onset, you suspect the flu when you grow hot with a fever and your head begins to split. Your lymph nodes become inflamed and tender to the touch. By nightfall, you're stricken with severe weakness. Now doubled over with excruciating abdominal pain, diarrhea, and vicious vomiting, life feels like it's running out. In the early morning hours the following day, you awaken in a haze of cruel agony. You've sprouted waxy lumps in your groin, armpits, and neck that are oozing bloody pus. You feel like a labored breathing bomb, ready to explode out of your tissue and flesh. Your orifices begin to bleed. You cannot move or muster any fight. By day 4, your extremities blacken. You're riddled with blood clots, cutting off your circulation, which presents an additional reckoning in the form of nerve pain. By day 7, the plague has invaded your entire body and transformed into septicemia. Your organs fail, finally dismissing you from your hell on earth. Major trigger warning. Rat torture is one hell of a sadistic execution method, most recently used in Uruguay and Brazil in the 80s. There are many methods, but all are horrifyingly slow, total nightmare fuel. I'm going to tell you what it would be like. This first method involves restraining a person on their back and placing a metal cage on their abdomen with one or more rats locked inside. The cage is heated up, causing the rodents to desperately seek escape by clawing their way into the body. Aside from feeling complete terror, you will first feel a parching pain from the hot metal against your flesh. Within seconds, your agony explodes as the rat tears into your tissue with its claws and teeth in a frenzy. With each passing minute, the pain will maddeningly intensify. With the ability to chew through brick, the rat will make its way inside of you within 30 minutes, tearing and chomping away at your bowels. There are no words to captivate the unworldly agony this will cause. Death will likely come from hypovolemic shock after many long hours of slowly bleeding to death, and chances are you'll remain conscious through most of it. Let's discuss what death by bleach poisoning would feel like. Bleach is highly corrosive, so it has no place inside of our bodies. Within moments of consuming it, you'll know that you just made a horrible mistake. The putrid taste alone will cling to your taste buds and linger beyond any possible chaser. Within minutes, you will feel a kindling fire roar from your mouth down to your gut as the chemical burns on every tissue that has made contact forms. The awful thing about chemical burns is that they will continue to worsen over time, so it's going to get so much worse. In short, bleach oxidizes your tissue and mucous membrane. A rusty penny flavor will blend with the already god-awful taste as your mouth and throat begins to bleed. Your esophagus and stomach will follow suit. Once you begin to projectile vomit blood, you're at serious risk of aspirating it into your lungs, which could result in asphyxiation. But the pain will be the worst part. You'll feel like someone nuked you from the inside. It can take up to 2 to 3 hours for your body to finally shut down due to blood loss, and it will be the worst hours of your life as the vomiting only adds gasoline to the fire burning inside of you. Let's discuss what it's like to die from a brain aneurysm. Sometimes aneurysms are silent, meaning they exist inside of a person's brain, but they do not cause any symptoms. It's likely that that aneurysm will never rupture, but if it does, it's pretty catastrophic. An aneurysm is basically a ballooning of a blood vessel that's at risk of leaking or rupturing. If you have a leaky aneurysm, you are more likely to survive. If your aneurysm ruptures, you'll be abruptly overcome by an explosive headache. I'm talking the kind of headache that prevents you from thinking or functioning. You might notice that part of your face is drooping or feels numb. You might experience tingling. Within seconds, violent convulsing may begin. If your aneurysm's large, chances are you'll experience the explosive pain in your head for a few seconds and then either lose consciousness immediately after or die due to extreme blood loss. In these cases, suffering is minimal. It can happen quick, like under a minute quick. In the case of smaller aneurysms, it can take several days for death to occur, and you're more likely to die from cardiac arrest due to intracranial pressure. Trigger warning, I'm going to tell you what it's like to die in a freak roller coaster accident. If you're on a coaster and your cart comes loose on the tracks, you're going to go flying. Roller coasters can race at a speed of up to 140 miles per hour, and if you throw different levels into the mix, it's not going to give you a huge shot at survival. Those levels will basically turn into ramps. You'll likely be stunned at first. I mean, you were just on a thrill ride moments before screaming your head off. Your rational thinking switch will not be in use. Hate to say it, but you might be better off flying off at the coaster's high point. This will really increase your odds of dying on impact. Your brain will not have time to process any pain, so it will be a misery-free death aside from the fear of anticipation. If it happens at a low point, dying on impact is still a possibility due to velocity. However, if the cart hasn't picked up speed yet, you'll likely obtain catastrophic injury and remain aware through it all. Luckily, your adrenaline will protect you from life-altering pain initially, but it may still catch up with you. Common injuries include broken ribs, spine, and pelvis, as well as ruptured spleen and, on occasion, decapitation. Internal bleeding is a common cause of death. Trigger warning, this video is about what it's like to die of COVID-19. Let's all just remember that there are so many amazing healthcare warriors fighting this battle every day. It's day 6 for you, being out of commission. You've been glued to your bed, shielding your family as much as possible. But today feels different. There's an invisible lead force pressing on your chest. Your body is sticky with a cold sweat. You fear that you might die if you fall asleep. You dial 911. At the hospital, films show that COVID is attacking your lungs. Your pulse oximeter reading is 93. The look on the doctor's face tells you that you might die. You're prescribed supplemental oxygen and wheeled to a sterile room. The following day, you feel worse. You're overwhelmed with an impending sense of doom. You feel like your lungs are filled with vicious hornets. They have filled with fluid. You wonder if you're drowning in mud. You FaceTime with your family and say your goodbyes because you now need a ventilator to have any shot. You're flooded with emotion. Is this it? Will I ever wake? You wonder. Medicine is pushed into your IV. There is no turning back. Things go from hazy to dark due to sedation. These are your last conscious moments. Time to talk about what it would be like to die in quicksand. Movies' portrayal of quicksand is grossly misinformed. You will not sink beyond your waist, but you can still die. First, there are the buzzards and vultures. Normally, they leave us alone, for the most part, but you're a stationary sitting duck. They can swoop down and slice your face with their talons or perhaps attempt to eat you, mistaking you for already dead. Other causes include hypothermia. This even happens in the desert once the sun goes down. Your body cannot keep its internal temperature regulated after you've been submerged in chilled quicksand. Your muscles will seize up and brain fog will set in. Over time, your organs will shut down. Another possibility is crush syndrome. After your skeletal muscles have endured long-term pressure, the compression damage causes a release of compounds that wreaks havoc on your entire system. Your body will go into shock. Your heart rate will race and become erratic, and your head will feel hot and swollen. Your kidneys will shut down, causing stabbing pain and severe illness. Eventually, it will cause you to slip into a coma and die. I'm here to explain what it might feel like to have a heart attack. Keep in mind that symptoms can greatly vary from person to person and sex to sex. You woke up sore today. Your bones ache and you have a nasty case of indigestion. You feel like a fire-breathing dragon. You skip the black coffee and pop a few Tums. You have way too much on your schedule to slow down. At work, you notice that you're struggling to climb the stairs. That's definitely not normal for your marathon running self. 2 clients are waiting on you, so you push on regardless. Once you reach the top, you're overwhelmed with nausea. You pop some more Tums and head towards the conference room. Halfway down the hallway, your head and chest grows hot. It's as if someone is deflating your lungs. The nausea turns to disorienting dizziness. You feel gravity pull you down. You sit to steady yourself. You finally realize that something is crushing your chest and neck. Your shoulder feels weighed down. This is a new bizarre sensation. Sweat is pooling in your gripped hands. A realization hits you. You say aloud, "I'm having a heart," before everything turns black. This is why we need to stay tuned in to our bodies. Time to talk about what it would be like to die from spontaneous human combustion. There is still little known about this phenomenon, and it's widely debated by the scientific community whether it exists. However, there are some bizarre cases that cannot be explained by anything else, and we are lucky enough today to have several cases, finally, with witnesses to help paint the picture. You're lying down on your couch because you've been feeling nauseated and achy. In the blink of an eye, you feel an abrupt, insane, explosive pain churning from your abdomen to your throat. You smell smoke and you see it radiating from your shirt. You're gonna puke, but the pain has you pinned. You lose your mind when you open your mouth and see a blue flame spit out. You're on fire, but you don't understand how. You screech and squeal, but no sound emits. It takes seconds for your nerves to feel the torture. Somehow the agony began deep and worked its way out. You fall off of the couch to the ground and try to roll, but you cannot move. The fire has you in its grips. Within another few seconds, the ungodly pain fades to black. You are dead in under 45 seconds. Trigger warning, I'm going to tell you what it's like to die in the gas chamber. You'll be strapped to a chair with holes inside of a sealed octagonal chamber. Beneath is a container filled with sulfuric acid and distilled water. Your executioner will pull a lever that will mix cyanide crystals with a mixture which creates hydrocyanic gas. Once your chamber grows hazy, your eyes will begin to water and burn, and an impending sense of doom will hit as your body realizes that your oxygen has been infiltrated. Your palms will secrete a chilled sweat, and your flesh will redden. You'll feel like your head is being forced upwards, and an invisible force is crushing your neck and chest. As the putrid, spoiled almond aroma grows nauseating, you'll desperately gasp for air. Your skin will twinge with searing pain that seems to go all the way through you. You'll feel as if something is forcing corrosive acid down your throat. Drool will pool and spill out of the sides of your mouth. Your eyes will be filled with an awkward pressure that grows as if they're going to pop, and they might. This unbearable agony must be endured for 10 to 18 minutes until your brain is completely starved of oxygen. I've studied so many murder cases where antifreeze was the murder weapon, and it's not pretty or pleasant. I'm going to tell you exactly how it would feel to die that way. The dangers don't come from the compound of antifreeze, but how the body metabolizes it. Anywhere from 30 minutes to several hours after consumption, you will be mowed down with something wicked, similar to severe food poisoning. You will feel a fire roar in your belly. You'll look and feel green. Violent projectile vomiting will strike. You'll have a nasty case of the bed spins and feel so unlevel that you'll wonder if you were drugged. Your head will split like someone smashed your head in with a hammer, and you'll struggle to speak. You'll be so weak and exhausted, but unable to sleep because your body will not give you a break from vomiting. Your esophagus may rupture from regurgitation, causing severe internal bleeding. As time passes, you'll have a deep pulsating pain in your back and sides. Your heart will pound out of your chest. Aggressive, agonizing convulsions will hit. You'll suffer for hours or days before your heart will break, and death will summon you from multi-organ failure. Welcome to episode 2 of my movie death scene series. Today I'll be explaining how the angel trap in Saw 3 would feel, so trigger warning. Well, today's not a good day. You come to attached to a very intimidating contraption that's actually inspired by the bloody go torture method. In front of you is a glass beaker filled with acid with a key at the bottom. You have 60 seconds to grab that key and unlock the device. Finally, you find the resolve to go for the key. You are instantly overcome with bloody, bubbling, splitting, burning. Your flesh splits and spits. The horrific pain crawls past your wrist. Your nerves are screaming, making it difficult to function. It's unlikely you'd actually be able to grab that key. After 60 seconds, the many metal arms hooked to your ribs expands, taking your bones as well as flesh and tissue with it. The force will certainly shatter your ribs, pushing and pulling them in several directions. Sorry to say, death may not be instant. In all likelihood, bone fragments will pierce your lungs, triggering suffocation. You'll feel an abrupt, explosive, hot, ripping pain, transcending all expectations. Suffocation will take at least 6 minutes. If you're lucky, fragments will puncture your heart, causing your death to be somewhat instant. Trigger warning. This video is all about what you would experience if you were fed through an industrial meat grinder. These machines are meant to grind chopped up frozen meat. Considering you're starting whole, death is going to take longer than you'd expect. If you're pulled in by your arm, every microscopic cell in your fingers and hands and arm will begin to rupture as the machine churns and pulverizes your bones. If even your cells rupture, your nerves don't stand a chance. You'll experience a burning hot, explosive pain along with a bizarre electrical sensation. Aside from crushing, your arm is also being minced up by wicked sharp blades. Eventually, you'll find yourself staring down the mouth of the machine as you're pulled farther in. You'll be on your stomach. You'll basically split from your neck to your chin, causing internal and possibly external decapitation. The force of the pull will suck in your shoulders and neck, but the crushing will push your head far back, causing it to basically snap. This is when the pain will end, but you will remain aware for several seconds. In total, death will take 14 to 20 seconds if you don't jam up the machine, and you'll be aware for all of it. Welcome to the start of a new series where I explain how deaths featured in horror movies would feel, beginning with the Saw series, so spoiler alert and trigger warning. I'm going to jump to Saw 2 because the reverse bear trap probably gave me the most nightmares. Time to put yourself in Amanda's shoes, except unlike Amanda, you don't beat the trap. 60 seconds lapses, triggering the device to open, which rips your jaw raw and wide. First of all, the trauma would no doubt shatter your mandible into tiny jagged fragments and trigger a crack from your temporal to your frontal skull bone. You will hear a god-awful crunching noise, but the pain of your nerves severing and exploding would overshadow the awkward pain of your broken bones. Then you must face the tragic misery of your tendons ripping apart. You will feel a full spectrum of types of pain. Only if you're lucky will you lose consciousness. The only saving grace is how heavily facial wounds bleed. Your body will weaken and your heart will begin to pound after 3 to 4 minutes. Your chest, throat, and head will grow hot and your vision will become distorted. You'll likely be dead of blood loss after 7 minutes and must contend with the explosive agony all that while. This is one of my nightmares. It's time to discuss dying on Mount Everest. You will likely die in the death zone, which is over 26,000 feet above sea level. This frigid hellscape can drop to near negative 100 degrees, and there's such a severe lack of oxygen that hypoxia begins instantly. First, your cells begin to suffocate and die the moment that you step foot in the death zone. Any exposed flesh will become cherry red and stiff as frostbite begins. It will feel like thousands of needles are pricking your skin over and over. You'll find your deep inhalations to be labored and unsatisfying. Your heart will begin to pound and grow rapid. The altitude will cause your lungs to fill with fluid, causing a deep, sharp pain upon breathing. Delirium will set in, causing panic and poor choices. Your body will scream to slow down and become weak. It's a trap. The moment that you stop, you're basically already dead. Hypothermia will have you in its grips, causing searing pain all over your body. Your muscles will seize up. Moving becomes impossible. Just before death, you experience a wave of extreme heat and then lose consciousness, lose control of your bowels and bladder, and die due to multi-organ failure. Trigger warning, let's dive into what it feels like to boil to death. Believe it or not, boiling to death was a practiced execution method in the 1500s. Today, it mostly happens by accident in hot springs or sewers. Have you ever gotten a scorching shock after removing a lid from a pot of boiling water? Well, your delicate tissues like your skin, lungs, and eyes will begin to burn from the steam before you touch the water. Once you hit, your extremities will begin screaming in scalding pain. Within moments, your limbs will follow suit. Soon you'll be so overcome with misery that you'll find it difficult to speak. Your entire body will redden, split, spit, and blister. Then comes the putrid, sweet, musty stench of your flesh and muscles cooking. The surrounding heat will also begin to cook your kidneys, stomach, and liver, pulling out any moisture. It's difficult to know exactly what it feels like, but the animal-like shrieks and howls that bystanders have witnessed tells us that it's far from pleasant. At a constant temp of 212 degrees or more, you'll be dead from hypothermia within around 13 minutes. Sadly, according to historical record, you'll be aware through most of it. It's time for me to explain what it would be like to die by electrocution, so trigger warning. It can happen in any room in your house. We are all basically roomies with an execution method. Once you're hit with a high voltage, you will lose your motor functions, including your ability to speak. Unlike in the movies, it will not be obvious to anybody who might be around. It will not necessarily make a noise or be visible to the naked eye. You'll feel an abrupt jolt, followed by a strange sensation of moving. Sharp pain will dance all along your limbs and body as your muscles rapidly expand and contract. Think Charlie horse on steroids. If you're not one of the lucky ones, you'll remain conscious initially. Unfortunately, that leaves you vulnerable to the feeling of a handful of lit sparklers exploding inside of your extremities and joints. Your nerves will go haywire, sending intense impulses of tickling, itching, or pain to your brain. Your heart is a muscle too, and it will skip beats or pound hard. Eventually, it will go completely out of whack, causing a dangerous arrhythmia that will ultimately kill you. Major trigger warning, it's time to dive headfirst into what it would feel like to die in a wood chipper, but be warned, counseling typically needs to be provided to first responders in these cases because, well, the scenes tend to be a traumatic mess. If you're fed head first, it will take approximately 3 seconds for you to die. First, you'll feel an extreme pressure and then raw ripping pain as your hair pulls your scalp off of your head. Next, you must contend with a sharp stabbing pain all over your head and face. Industrial wood chippers have several large rows that look like giant rolling pins with sharp, thick notches all over. You're basically being fed between them. Your vision will become shrouded as blood runs out of your many wounds that are filled with metal. Then comes the horrific crushing pain. As the sharp notches anchor your head in place, your noggin will slowly be churned between the large metal rows, turning your tissue into pieces. I wish I could say that you wouldn't feel it, but 3 seconds is plenty long for your brain to process the pain. Adrenaline would help, but I have no doubt that you will feel and hear your skull bone crunching. The pain fades finally when your brain is basically pureed by the powerful machine. I've already explained what it would be like to go headfirst through a wood chipper, but that's obviously not the only way that it can go. Welcome to part 2, where I explain what it would be like to die feet first, so trigger warning. Since my first video, I've been introduced to a different model of wood chipper by Lord Bowman, which works a little different than the first. It will take approximately 9 to 14 seconds to die, depending on your height. Of course, jams frequently happen with these machines, which will only prolong the hell. Your body will try its best to protect you from earth-shattering pain, but how much it will work remains to be seen. First, your feet will be diced up and crushed, which will pulverize your bones. Then your lower legs. Your actual cells are going to rupture in the process, and your vessels will be severed, but it's still not over. Your kneecaps will split into dozens of fragments. Once your groin reaches the machine, big things will begin to happen. You have major arteries there, which will accelerate blood loss and weaken your state. Death will be imminent by the time your abdomen and chest reaches the mouth, which will slam down on your aorta and heart, turning it to jelly. Finally, your torture will cease. The world was struck with Kobe and Gigi's passing, leaving many wondering what their final moments were like. I'm here to explain what it's like to die in a helicopter crash. Trigger warning. Just about everyone on board the Sikorsky S-76B died on impact, meaning their brains did not have time to process the pain. Additionally, it's doubtful that they saw it coming. The crash was due to low visibility. The copter was flying low, and it hit a hillside and caught fire. Typically, helicopters hover at around 10,500 feet, which is just over 7 times higher than the Empire State Building. Despite flying lower than commercial planes, they are deadlier. If you're on board a crashing helicopter, you'll most likely feel it coming. If the vessel experiences a malfunction and begins plummeting towards the ground, you'll be jostled all around in your seat. It will take approximately 18 seconds to impact the ground. Needless to say, you'll have 18 seconds worth of panic and anticipation. But in all likelihood, you'll also die on impact. You may inhale one final time in that moment before everything disappears to darkness. You will be gone before you have a chance to feel any burning from the fire or explosion that will result from the impact. Major trigger warning. This is going to be intense and grotesque, so proceed with caution. I'm going to explain how it would feel to die by scaphism. Your hands and feet will be tied to the end of a boat or hollow logs. You will then be force-fed milk and honey until you become violently ill and it all runs right through you. Finally, you're smeared with more honey and placed in a swamp and left as food for the bugs. Your first horror is your loss of dignity, which is soon overshadowed by the sharp stinging pain dancing along your flesh from the bees. The scorching sun will only tenderize your wounds. You'll weaken severely from your loss of body fluids, and you will continue to be sick throughout. Soon, maggots are attracted to the smell of feces. Slowly, the creepy crawlers will infiltrate your body and lay eggs, which will trigger the process of being consumed from the inside out. Eventually, you will be completely covered in bugs. You'll experience every possible type of pain at all magnitudes. Severe infection will set in. If you're lucky, you'll be force-fed milk and honey to keep you alive long enough to be eaten. Death can take up to 17 days. Well, it wasn't until I began researching that I realized the magnitude of misery that this death would bring. I'm here to tell you what it would be like to die by crucifixion, so trigger warning. There's a bit of misconception about how long a person can live while crucified. What I mean by crucifixion is your arms outstretched to the side with 7-inch nails driving your wrists and ankle bones into a cross. Your median nerve in your wrist will be severed by the nail, which will paralyze your hands and hurt like a son of a gun. Your leg bones might be shattered by the executioner first, so misery is immediate. You'll be physically unable to support your weight with your legs, putting all of the strain on your arms. This will gradually drag your shoulders, elbows, and wrists out of their sockets, making your arms 6 inches longer. Once that happens, your chest is all that's left to bear your weight, which will impede your ability to breathe. Your rib cage will tilt upward, basically keeping you in an infinite state of breathing in instead of exhaling. Either pressure will build around your heart, causing it to give out, or you will die by suffocation. So, in short, you'll be in brutal agony and then slowly suffocate. It's physically impossible to survive beyond 24 hours. I think of all natural disasters, tsunamis frighten me the most. Let's talk about what it would be like to die in one. A tsunami has the kind of power that runs through the deepest depths of the ocean, which means that us fragile humans would never stand a chance. These deadly disasters are typically provoked by earthquakes or volcanic eruptions. If you're in the direct path without a building or vehicle to house you, you're vulnerable to recruitment of being in the first ring of casualties. The powerful wave will pick up heavy debris along the way, which means a terrain cart, picket fence, or even Mack truck could come sailing at you, possibly impaling, crushing, or decapitating you, killing you instantly. Of course, drowning is a risk. If you're knocked out and fall into the water or just pulled in, your brain will force you to take an involuntary breath, inhaling the water after 87 seconds, causing you to lose consciousness in around 2 minutes and die in 6. Of course, there's a chance of dying of hypothermia if you remain stranded, wet, and cold. This could transpire anywhere from 15 minutes to 15 hours, and the longer it takes, the more painful it will be. Let me tell you how it would feel to die in a dryer. If you're on air fluff, it might be slightly less painful, but just as deadly. If you're on high heat, you're in for a world of hurt. Have you ever put on a pair of jeans fresh out of the dryer only to burn your skin on the middle button? Well, dryers reach temperatures of up to 140 degrees. In the first minute, complete panic will be your biggest worry. It will overshadow the fact that you are smacking hard every couple of seconds. As the heat intensifies, your skin's epidermis will begin to burn. It will be a bizarre sensation, like you're slowly being seared by an external heat source. Every time you hit hard, an intensified jolt of burning pain will ring through your nerves. Within 10 minutes, your head will feel hazy due to lack of oxygen. You'll grow nauseous and possibly begin to vomit after 15 due to heat exhaustion. Near 20, the burning will penetrate deep to your lower layers of skin. Your flesh will begin to split open. You may have shattered bones. You'll be in a dizzying, spinning hell. Your eardrums will feel like they're about to explode, and they might. It may take up to an hour to finally die due to asphyxiation. Your autopsy is going to take a long time due to the burns and massive trauma. Welcome to the video where I explain how it would feel to have your head crushed by a hydraulic press, so trigger warning. With a crushing force of up to 25 tons, it will turn your head into fine china. First, you'll feel complete panic as the metal arm clamps down on your head. I imagine that your head will be on its side, resting on your ear. As the flat base applies its pressure, your ear will basically suction to it, causing extreme force to enter your ear canal. This will likely rupture your eardrum, causing a deep, jarring, explosive pain. There's no time to fixate on it because your superficial blood vessels begin to basically explode. Also, somebody rudely lit the base of your head on fire. It feels so hot and searing that you wonder if your brain might melt. You hear a nauseating crunching right before you're hit with an intense roaring pain as your skull shatters. The force causes your jaw to dislocate, split, and splinter. Your cells in your soft tissue begin to burst. Your brain's being shot with bone fragments. Your head's now a bomb ready to detonate. You feel fluid ooze out of your orifices. Finally, after 7 to 20 seconds, your suffering ends. Post-mortem, brain matter will spit out of the blown holes in your head and your eyes will likely burst. Well, we've discussed many strange ways to to die, including a dryer. Settle in and let me explain how it would feel to die in a washing machine. If you're on the hot cycle, your panic will melt into pure torment when 130-degree scalding water begins to flood onto your flesh. Within 30 seconds, your skin will begin to bubble and spit as third-degree burns form. But this is only the beginning of your trouble. Once the spin cycle begins, you'll not only grow dizzy, but your vision will become hazy and eventually fade completely. A dense pressure in your head will pound and your eyeballs will feel like they're about to explode. Washers can have up to 1,000 revolutions per minute, and your body's not equipped to handle the G-force. Then there's the obvious, the hot water. Once disoriented, you'll be unable to fight inhaling it into your lungs. Your chest and throat will feel like they're about to combust to match your skin. The transfer of oxygen to your blood will stop, and an impending sense of doom will strike. Within a total of 19 minutes, all of your life will drain from your body. Well, we've all seen it in the movies. Perhaps you've wondered what it might actually feel like to be stabbed to death, and I'm here to tell you what you can expect. So, trigger warning. You may not even realize that you're being attacked with a knife. Many survivors say that they believed they were being beaten until the blood started pooling on the floor. Your mind will not be completely in tune with the profound pain and trauma being forced upon you, but you will notice that each deep wound is burning up. It will feel very hot. The most common sites for stabbings are the chest and abdomen by a landslide. Your ribs may help protect your heart and lungs, but the brute force of the attack may shatter them, resulting in a collapsed lung. The only way that death will be immediate is if your assailant manages to pierce your heart the moment that your kidney, spleen, or liver is punctured. Exsanguination or massive blood loss begins. Your fingers and toes will start to tingle, your ears will ring, you'll feel as though you're about to vomit up your heart. All of the colors surrounding you will fade to black and your head will feel very large. Finally, you will lapse into unconsciousness with death following close behind. In case you've ever wondered what it would be like to suffocate to death, I'm here to tell you. Suffocation can come in many forms. One sadly common form is strangulation, and it's messier than you'd think. It's common for the throat to rip depending on the force applied. This causes dissection of the arteries, which will bleed out massively. Suffocation is a painstaking process. Unlike in the movies, it can take up to 4 to 6 minutes to die. You won't be able to make a sound. Sheer panic will set in. Your body is going into survival mode. Once it recognizes that it's unable to complete basic functions, alarm bells sound. Your throat will begin screaming in searing pain. It will burn as if you're swallowing acid. Your face will turn red and look like it's about to explode. Surface blood vessels will begin to snap, causing a red webbing-like rash. After several minutes, your face and lips will turn blue. Your chest will grow heavy and painful. Your brain will go haywire. Dizziness will take hold. An impending sense of doom will consume your thoughts. You will slip into black. You'll lose control of your bowels and bladder. Your heart will stop beating.